I never imagined the thing that would break me would be 3 rude words typed into a glowing rectangle. It should have been laughter, or an argument, or the low, inevitable drift that settles into long marriages. Instead, it was a bragged, crude, childish, and delivered with the casual cruelty of someone who thinks they've already won. I found the message by accident, a cloud backup, a moment of curiosity after sleep eluded me. There it was, in her bright, confident font, forwarded to a friend with a wink emoji. He's got a big stick, you should see what he does to me. Her name is Laura. We were married 10 years. We built a house, carried each other through layoffs and illnesses, learned which coffee mug belonged to whom. In the years when ordinary life demanded ordinary loyalty, she had been my anchor. That text turned her into a stranger. Shock gave way to a cold, furious clarity. I could have woken her, pulled the truth like a splinter, and let us bleed honesty into the sheets. I could have made a scene, thrown things, called names. But anger without strategy is a tantrum, and I wanted something better than noise. I wanted consequences that fit the betrayal. She had traded our trust for thrill and flung her trophy around like a banner. I would return to her only what she valued most, taken in a way that taught rather than destroyed me. I began by learning how careless deceit becomes, how many small slips hide the big lies. Laura was careful, but not meticulous. She left receipts in joint accounts, photos with geotags, and a habit of saying one thing to me and another in messages. I set up a private folder, password and encrypted, and started to collect. Screenshots, timestamps, dinner receipts paid with a card that wasn't ours, a trail like breadcrumbs for a story I never expected to tell. I didn't show them to anyone. I didn't post. I cataloged. While I gathered proof, I also secured myself. I spoke with a lawyer and moved savings into a trust we'd discussed the year before and never executed. I changed account passwords, updated beneficiaries, and made sure that our joint liabilities wouldn't be my sole burden if the house needed to be split. It wasn't cold practicality, it was reclaiming control from the person who decided my life was a backdrop. Laura never suspected. She assumed I was the same man who left spice jars out of order and forgot anniversaries. She continued her late-night rendezvous, gloating in texts, attaching smug photos and detail-rich boasts that would have made a lesser spouse erupt. Each message was a confirmation, not just of an affair, but of contempt. That contempt deserved an answer that did not stoop to abuse. When the time felt right, I made the first move that would sting. I didn't confront her in the kitchen or humiliate her in a crowded room. Instead, I delivered facts in places that mattered to her. I compiled a clean, precise dossier, messages clearly dated, photos with time-stamped metadata, and a timeline that showed how her work travel and alleged volunteer commitments matched up with nights she'd been elsewhere. Nothing salacious, nothing embellished, just evidence that contradicted her carefully curated life. I sent that dossier anonymously to her workplace's HR department where her reputation for integrity was crucial. I included a brief note: we believe these materials show conflicts of interest and time discrepancies relevant to ongoing client work. HR, bound by procedure, opened an inquiry. Quiet interviews followed. Nothing explosive, a professional audit, polite questions, a request for clarification on dates. But image and reliability are fragile things. Once doubt settles into a place, it spreads. Then I reached out, anonymously again, to a small circle of mutual friends. Not with salacious gossip, but with facts, screenshots and timelines. People react to evidence, not to rumor. The friends who mattered to Laura began to ask questions, to notice the contradictions when she said she was volunteering while a message placed her at a hotel downtown. Invitations cooled. The polite space she'd occupied in our social group contracted until it was impossible to pretend nothing had shifted. Perhaps the cruelest stroke was one she didn't see coming: the clients. Laura had cultivated long-standing professional relationships. I sent a discreet, factual summary to a couple of her biggest accounts, not to ruin her, but to protect them. They listened, they asked for an audit, and audits don't forgive hurried explanations. Within weeks, a client contract that had been renegotiated in her favor was put on hold pending review. Her inbox filled with requests for clarification. The woman who boasted about big sticks found that prestige and pay were not immune to her choices. She called me in the middle of it, voice bright, a rehearsed cheerfulness masking something else. "They're just jealous," she said. "People talk. It'll blow over." I let her talk. When work pressures and social distance started to close around her, she panicked in the most human of ways. She begged. She called friends, texted apologies she wanted to be sincere, scrubbed photos from social feeds. She tried to stitch back the life she'd unpicked with a string of promises. But public life operates by different rules than private desire. Trust, once cracked, leaks. Apologies arrived late, consequences did not. There was a moment I expected to relish, the public humiliation, the dramatic pleading. But when it came, it landed with a hollow thud. She stood in front of me one night, the house that had been ours suddenly feeling like a showroom of memories she'd pawned, and asked for mercy. Her eyes were raw, not with the triumph she once flaunted, but with genuine fear at the losses stacking up, professional credibility, friendships, the quiet dignity of a name unblemished in family circles. I realized then the final measure of my revenge. I could make her suffer for the sake of retribution, or I could take the moral high ground that would preserve me. I handed her the thumb drive with all the evidence and said, without malice, "You made your choices. Live with them. Learn. No theatrics. No triumphant gloating. Mercy, quietly given, cut deeper than any screaming demand for satisfaction." Laura left the next day. The neighborhood had its whispers, the office adjusted, and the friends who remained did so at a distance that kept both of us safe from further spectacle. I changed locks, finalized the financial protections I'd set in motion, and sat with the quiet that remained like a wound that needed tending. The victory tasted oddly flat, because the thing I had wanted most, in the beginning, was simply the restoration of trust, not this ledger of losses. Months later, I'm still rebuilding. I teach myself to sleep without checking for the next message. I meet people who are kind, careful with the fragile things in me. Sometimes I think about vengeance and its odd hollow center. Sometimes I think about the small, essential acts of love that make marriage worth the risk. I made choices that protected me and taught a hard lesson without stooping to cruelty. That, in the end, felt like the real payback, not to punish until ruin, but to refuse to be collateral in someone else's arrogance.